me, please! Let go of me! Jenna! Jenna, where are you?
Hello guys, welcome to my channel where dark and twisted stories of mystery, horror and betrayal are told. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, let's rewind because this night, it didn't start like this. It started 6 hours earlier when everything still felt safe. Mara was standing at the end of a dimly lit street, heels sinking slightly into the wet pavement, staring up at the old warehouse that had been transformed, or so everyone said, into the most exclusive Valentine's night event in the city. No flyers, no social media ads, just a whispered invitation passed from friend to friend like a secret too good to keep. It was Jenna who had told her about it. Jenna, her best friend since sophomore year of college, the girl who had sat beside her through the worst breakup of her life, the one who always seemed to know exactly what Mara needed before she even opened her mouth. They had been inseparable for nearly 4 years, and when Jenna showed up at Mara's apartment 2 weeks before Valentine's Day with that signature grin, wide, mischievous, almost electric, Mara didn't even think twice. "You need to come with me," she had said, leaning against the cocktail table like she owned the place. "There's this event, private, invite only. It's going to be the best night of your life." Mara laughed. "The best night of my life is pretty hard to beat, Jen." Jenna tilted her head, eyes glinting. "That's because you haven't been to one of these yet." There was something in the way she said it, something Mara couldn't quite place. A flicker, a pause that lasted half a second too long, but Mara shook it off. That was just Jenna. She was always dramatic. It was one of the things that made her so magnetic to be around. Now, standing outside the warehouse with the bass rattling through the concrete beneath her feet, Mara pulled out her phone and typed a quick message. "Where are you?" The reply came almost instantly. "Already inside. Come in. The door's open. You're going to love it here. Kisses." Mara smiled, tucked her phone into her clutch and pushed forward. The entrance was surprisingly understated. A plain black door, no signage, no bouncer. She almost walked past it if not for the faint golden light bleeding through the crack at the bottom. She pushed it open and the sound swallowed her whole. Inside, the space was massive, vaulted ceilings draped in deep red fabric, strings of warm amber lights crisscrossing overhead like a constellation no one had mapped. The air smelled sweet. Roses maybe, something else underneath, heavier, almost metallic, but it was buried so deep beneath the sweetness that her brain simply let it pass. People were everywhere. Dancing, laughing, drinks in hand, dressed in everything from elegant red gowns to edgy black leather. It was glamorous, beautiful. It felt like something out of a dream someone had carefully built just for her. And then she spotted Jenna. Her best friend was near the center of the room, leaning casually against a cocktail table, a champagne glass held loosely between 2 fingers. She wore a deep burgundy dress Mara had never seen, fitted, elegant, almost theatrical. When she looked up and saw Mara approaching, that grin came back, the same one from the apartment, wide, warm, knowing. "You made it," she said, pulling her into a hug that lasted a bit too long. "Of course I did," Mara said, stepping back and glancing around in awe. "Jenna, this place is unreal. Who even runs this thing?" Jenna waved a hand. "Does it matter? Tonight is about you, about letting go, forgetting every boring, exhausting thing about your regular life just for a few hours." She extended a glass toward Mara, something sparkling, pale gold with a single rose petal floating on the surface. "Here, try this. Everyone's having one." Mara took it without hesitation and brought it to her lips. It was sweet, almost too sweet, with an odd warmth that spread through her chest the second she swallowed. She blinked. The taste lingered, coating her tongue in a way she couldn't quite describe. Not unpleasant, just present, like it was quietly turning something on inside her. "Good?" Jenna asked, her eyes never leaving Mara's face. "Really good, actually," Mara said softly. The night moved like a slow, golden tide after that. They danced, they laughed. A man in all-black suit appeared at Mara's side and refilled her glass before she noticed it was empty, smooth, silent, like a shadow with manners. The music shifted around the hour mark, slower, deeper, almost hypnotic, and the crowd seemed to sway with it, moving in a single, eerie, unconscious rhythm, like a single body breathing together. It was somewhere between her second and third glass that the small things started. The lights pulsing, just barely in sync with the beat. The conversations nearby sounding a little too rehearsed, a little too polished, like everyone had practiced their lines beforehand. And Jenna, sweet familiar Jenna, kept glancing toward a dark corridor at the far end of the room. Quick, subtle, the way someone watches a clock when they are waiting for something inevitable to begin. Mara almost asked. The question was right there, forming on her tongue. But the music swelled. The sweetness in her blood pulled her back into the warmth, and the thoughts slipped away, like smoke, like it was never there at all. For now, the party was everything it promised to be, and Mara had no idea, not even a flicker of one, how desperately she needed it to stay that way. The first hour had felt like floating, but somewhere past the third glass, or was it the fourth, Mara had lost count. The floating started to feel less like freedom and more like being stuck. Her limbs were heavy, not drunk heavy, something else, something quieter, more deliberate, like the weight had been placed there on purpose. She set her glass down on the nearest surface and pressed her fingertips against her temple. The lights above her were doing something strange now, pulsing, breathing. Mara blinked hard, trying to sharpen the edges of the room, but everything kept bending at the corners, soft and slippery, like a dream refusing to let her wake up. "Jenna," she murmured, turning her head. "Jenna, I think something's—" But Jenna wasn't there. The cocktail table where her best friend had been standing just a minute ago was empty. The champagne glass Jenna had been holding, gone. The burgundy dress, the easy smile, the warmth of her presence, all of it vanished, like she had simply been erased from this scene. Mara's stomach dropped. She scanned the crowd, pushing herself up straighter, eyes darting from face to face. Strangers, every single one of them, laughing, dancing, swaying to that slow, hypnotic music, like nothing in the world was wrong, like this was the most normal Valentine's night in history. "Excuse me," Mara said, stepping toward a woman in a black dress nearby. "Have you seen my friend? She was just here. Burgundy dress, brown hair." The woman turned to her, smiled. It was a perfectly shaped smile, too perfect actually, rehearsed, like someone had taught her exactly how wide to make it. "You should have another drink," the woman said, gently. "You look like you need one." Mara stared at her. What?" But the woman had already turned back to the crowd, disappearing into the sea of bodies like water closing over a stone. Something cold crawled up Mara's spine. She pulled out her phone. The screen flickered once, twice, and then settled on her messages. She opened the last conversation with Jenna and typed with fingers that trembled just slightly. "Where did you go?" 1 minute passed. 2. The 3 little dots appeared, hovered, and then vanished. No reply. She typed again. "Jenna, I'm serious. Where are you?" Nothing. She switched to her call log and pressed Jenna's number. The line connected, she could hear it on the other end, but no one picked up. It rang 5 times, 6, 7, and then cut to silence. Not voicemail, just silence. Mara lowered the phone slowly, her heartbeat thudding louder now, competing with the bass. Okay, calm down. She's probably in the bathroom. She probably just stepped out for air. This is Jenna. This is your best friend. There's a rational explanation for everything. She told herself this firmly, the way you talk to a child afraid of the dark. And for a moment, just a brief, stubborn moment, it worked. Then she noticed the boy. He couldn't have been older than 19 or 20, leaning against a pillar near the edge of the dance floor with a drink in his hand that he wasn't actually drinking. His eyes were moving across the room in slow, deliberate sweeps, not dancing, not socializing, not enjoying himself at all. He was scanning, cataloging, the way a camera does. And when Mara's gaze landed on him, his eyes snapped to hers, fast, precise, and held. She looked away first. Her heart was beating faster now. The metallic smell she had dismissed earlier was back, stronger, threading through the sweetness like a vein of rust beneath gold. She breathed through her mouth to avoid it and started moving, not dancing, walking toward the far end of the room, toward the corridor she had seen Jenna glancing at earlier. She didn't know why, not really. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way Jenna's eyes had kept drifting there all night, pulling like a current neither of them named out loud. Maybe it was simply the only direction that felt like it led somewhere instead of nowhere. The corridor was narrow. The moment she stepped into it, the music dropped, not gradually, but sharply, like someone had thrown a switch. The golden light from the main room didn't follow her. Here, the lighting was cold, blue-white, clinical. It hummed faintly overhead, a sound that vibrated somewhere behind her teeth. Mara's heels clicked against the concrete floor. Each step echoed in a way that made the space feel larger than it was. The walls on either side were bare. No decoration, no fabric, nothing. Just grey, unfinished concrete, the kind that belonged in a basement or a warehouse nobody was supposed to be inside of. She passed 3 doors, all closed, all unmarked. At the 4th door, she stopped. It was slightly ajar, just an inch, maybe 2, but enough for a thin ribbon of red light to bleed through the gap and fall across the floor at her feet. Not the warm amber red from the main room. This was sharper, colder, the kind of red that didn't make you feel safe. Mara stood there for what felt like a long time, her hand hovering an inch from the door, her breath coming in shallow, measured pulls. Every instinct she had, every quiet, primal thing buried deep in the back of her brain was screaming to turn around, to walk back into the noise and the crowd and the sweetness and pretend she never came down this corridor. She almost did. But then she heard it. A voice, faint, muffled, coming from somewhere beyond the door. It could have been anything, a conversation, a laugh, music from another room. But underneath it, threaded so delicately that Mara almost missed it entirely, was another sound. A whimper, small, frightened, human. Her hand dropped to her side. She pushed the door open. The door swung inward without resistance, like it had been waiting for her. The room beyond it was large, larger than Mara expected from the narrow hallway, and it took her eyes several seconds to adjust. The red light was coming from somewhere above, mounted into the ceiling in long, even strips that cast everything beneath them in a deep, arterial glow. It was the kind of light that made skin look wrong, too vivid, too exposed. And there was a lot of skin. Mara's breath caught in her throat like a fist. The space was set up almost like a showroom. Glass cases, dozens of them, lined the walls on both sides, arranged neatly, symmetrically, like displays in a museum. Each case was lit from within by its own soft white light, and inside each one, resting on a bed of black velvet, was something. Something small, something wet, something that looked unmistakably like it had once been part of a person. Mara's legs moved without her permission, one step forward, then another, pulling her closer to the nearest case. She didn't want to look. Every cell in her body was begging her to close her eyes, to turn away, to run. But her feet carried her forward anyway, drawn by the same terrible gravity that makes people slow down when they pass an accident on the highway. She looked. A hand, small, a child's hand maybe, or a woman's, preserved in something clear and still, fingers slightly curled, the skin almost translucent under the white light. It looked peaceful. That was the worst part. It looked almost delicate, like something precious that someone had loved enough to keep. Mara's stomach lurched. She stumbled backward, pressing her hand over her mouth, her eyes darting frantically from case to case. A shoulder, a section of rib cage, cleaned and pale, something she couldn't identify at first, curved, glistening, and then she realized what it was, and the sound that came out of her was not quite a scream. It was smaller than that, quieter, the sound of something inside her cracking open. "Pretty, aren't they?" The voice came from behind her. Mara spun around. A man was standing in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed entirely in black. Not the man who had been refilling her glass earlier. Someone else, someone she hadn't seen all night. His face was calm, composed, the kind of calm that isn't natural, the kind that's practiced, the way surgeons learn to be calm before they cut. What is this?" Mara's voice came out barely above a whisper. She cleared her throat, tried again, louder. "What the hell is this place?" The man tilted his head, almost amused. "You're the one who walked in here, sweetheart. No one forced you down that hallway." "Where did these come from?" Mara demanded, her voice shaking now despite her best efforts to hold it steady. "Whose are they? Are those people, are they alive?" He finished for her. Shrugged. Some of them aren't. Depends on what was taken and how much was left behind. He said it the way someone might explain a return policy at a department store. Casual, practiced, routine. Mara's mind was spinning. The sweetness of the drink was still sitting heavy in her blood, dulling the edges of her panic, slowing her reactions down by just enough to feel dangerous. She needed to think. She needed to move. She needed to get out of this room and out of this building and as far away from this place as physically possible. "The drinks," she said, her voice steadier now, a strange clarity cutting through the fog. "You put something in them, in all of them." The man didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it either. He just watched her with that same patient, almost clinical expression, like she was a specimen that had just done something mildly interesting. "I want to leave," she said. "That's not really how tonight works." A sound echoed from somewhere deeper in the room, behind the rows of cases, where the red light didn't quite reach. Mara turned toward it. Another corridor, narrower than the first, disappearing into darkness. And from somewhere inside that darkness, the sound again, that whimper she had heard through the door. Closer now, more distinct, and this time underneath it, words, broken, desperate, barely audible words that made Mara's blood turn to ice. Please, someone, I can't feel my. Mara took a step toward the sound before she even registered that her legs were moving. "I wouldn't," the man said, and for the first time, something shifted in his voice. Not a warning exactly, more like a suggestion, the kind a zookeeper gives when a visitor gets too close to the glass. But Mara was already moving, past the cases, past the glow, into the narrow corridor where the light turned to shadow and the air turned cold and sharp, like breathing through a blade. She rounded a corner and stopped. A woman was on the floor, young, maybe mid-20s, still dressed in what probably was a beautiful outfit hours ago, before it was torn open and stained dark. She was conscious, barely, her eyes half open and glassy, fixed on something she couldn't see. Her left arm was wrapped in a soaked bandage, and where the fabric had come loose, she could see. She looked away, swallowed hard, forced herself to look again. "Hey," Mara whispered, crouching slowly, gently, the way you approach a wounded animal. "Hey, can you hear me? What's your name?" The woman's lips moved. It took 3 tries before any sound came out. They took it, she breathed. Her eyes drifted, slow, unfocused, until they found Mara's face. They sold it. Mara's legs shook. Her whole body was shaking. Who? She asked. Though some deep, horrible part of her already knew the answer, had known it since she saw Jenna's eyes glance toward this corridor again and again all night, calm and knowing and rehearsed. Your friend, she whispered. She's one of them. The words hung in the air between them, like smoke that refused to clear. Mara didn't move, didn't breathe. She stayed crouched on that cold concrete floor, staring at the woman whose face was pale as paper under the blue-white light, waiting, desperately hoping for her to take it back, to laugh, to say she was confused, delirious, that the pain was making her hallucinate. The woman didn't take it back. Her eyes were drifting again, slipping in and out of focus, but her lips kept moving, quiet now, almost peaceful, in the way people get quiet when they've already surrendered something they can't get back. She brought me here, the woman whispered, smiled the whole time like it was a favor. Something inside Mara's chest split open, not dramatically, not with a gasp or a cry. It split quietly, the way ice cracks under weight before anyone hears it. A slow, silent fracture running through everything she thought she knew about the person she trusted most in the world, Jenna. Sweet, dramatic, magnetic Jenna, who sat beside her during the worst nights of her life, who always knew exactly what to say, who had looked her in the eyes 2 weeks ago and smiled that wide, mischievous smile and said, "It's going to be the best night of your life." Mara pressed her palms flat against the floor and breathed. In, out. The air tasted like copper and something chemical she couldn't name. She had to move. She knew this. Every second she stayed in this corridor was a second longer she was inside a building full of people who had already proven in the most horrifying way possible what they were capable of. The man in black was still somewhere behind her. There could be others. There were almost certainly others. She looked back at the woman on the floor. "Can you stand?" A weak shake of the head. The woman's eyes were closing now, heavy, the kind of exhaustion that comes after something has been taken from you your body desperately needed to keep. "Stay here," she said, and the absurdity of the instruction almost made her laugh. Where else was she going to go? "I'm going to get help. I promise you, I'm going to get you out of here." The woman's hand twitched, reaching, and for a brief second her fingers closed around Mara's wrist, weak, trembling, but firm enough to stop her. "Don't trust," the woman's voice was barely a thread now. "Don't trust anyone in here, not a single person." Mara held her gaze for a long beat. Then she nodded, gently freed her wrist and stood. The corridor stretched behind her, back toward the showroom, back toward the main event, back toward the music and the golden lights and the crowd of strangers who smiled too perfectly and drank too quietly. Mara moved through it quickly, her heels silent now. She had kicked them off somewhere without remembering when. Her bare feet cold against the concrete, every nerve in her body firing at once. She passed the cases without looking. She couldn't. Not again. Not tonight. Not ever. The man in black was gone from the doorway. The hallway beyond was empty, lit in that same cold surgical blue. Mara moved fast, one hand pressed against the wall for balance, her mind racing faster than her feet. Phone. She needed her phone. She patted her hands against herself and felt the clutch still somehow tucked against her side, half unzipped, barely hanging on. She pulled it open and grabbed the phone. The screen was dim, battery at 11%. She opened her messages and typed with fingers that had stopped shaking. Not from calm, from something harder, something colder. She didn't text Jenna. Instead, she opened her contacts, scrolled past the J's, and stopped. Detective Marcus Hale, a name she had saved months ago after a chance encounter at a coffee shop. A mutual friend had introduced them, and something about the way he carried himself, quiet and watchful, had made her keep his number. She had never thought she'd use it, not like this. Her thumb hovered. One tap, that was all it would take. She tapped. The call connected. 1 ring, 2, 3. Mara's breath was loud in her own ears, deafening in the silence of the hallway. "Hale?" A voice answered, gruff, alert, despite whatever hour it was. "Detective Hale, my name is Mara Chen. We met a few months ago. I need help. I need help right now." The words tumbled out faster than she intended, but her voice held, barely. A pause on the other end, short, focused. "Where are you?" Mara closed her eyes, tried to remember the street, the warehouse, the way she had walked here with champagne on her breath and no idea what was waiting inside. She gave him the address, the cross streets she remembered earlier, the name of the landmark 2 blocks away, and he repeated it back to confirm. "Stay on the line," he said. "I'm sending someone. Do not engage with anyone. Do not—" "Detective," Mara's voice dropped. Quiet now, controlled. "They are selling body parts in the back rooms. There are people hurt. At least one, a woman, she's badly injured. And there are buyers in the main hall, dozens of them." Silence on the line, the kind of silence that tells you the person on the other end just recalculated everything about their night. "Stay on the line," he repeated, and this time there was an edge to it, the edge of someone who had just understood exactly how serious this was. Mara kept the phone pressed to her ear and started walking. Back toward the main hall, back toward the noise and the light and the bodies of strangers, not because she wanted to, because somewhere in that crowd was Jenna, and Mara needed to see her face, needed to look into the eyes of the person who had handed her that drink, who had smiled that smile, who had led her here like a lamb into something she never could have imagined. She needed to see it, the truth, all of it, written plainly, without a single layer of pretense left to hide behind. She pushed through the corridor entrance and back into the main hall. The music hit her again, loud, heavy, pulsing. The crowd was still there, still moving, still smiling. The golden light still hung overhead like a fake sky. Everything looked exactly the same as it had 2 hours ago when the night felt alive and golden and full of possibility. But Mara saw it differently now. Every smile was a mask. Every laugh was a performance. Every single person in this room was either a buyer, a seller, or something in between, and she was the only one awake enough to know it. Her eyes swept the crowd, searching, locking onto face after face, stranger after stranger, scanning for burgundy, for brown hair, for that smile she had trusted her entire life. And then she found her. Jenna was standing near the far wall, half hidden by a pillar, champagne glass still in hand. She wasn't dancing, she wasn't laughing. She was watching the entrance to the corridor, the one Mara had just walked out of, with an expression Mara had never seen on her face before. Not guilt, not panic, not fear, calculation. Their eyes met across the room, 30 feet apart, maybe 40, and for one long frozen second, neither of them moved. The music swelled around them, the crowd swayed, the golden lights pulsed overhead like a heartbeat. And then Jenna's expression shifted, slowly, deliberately, the calculation melting, replaced by something softer, something familiar, something that looked to anyone watching exactly like concern. She mouthed 2 words, "Are you okay?" Mara stared at her. The phone was still pressed against her ear. Detective Hale's voice was still there, faint now, asking if she was still with him, if she could hear him, if she was safe. Mara didn't answer him. She held her gaze for a long beat. Then she smiled back, slow, calm, and completely empty, and something in the air between them changed. Something that had been unspoken for a long time finally found its shape. The clock on the wall behind Jenna read 11:58. 2 minutes to midnight, and somewhere in the building, the sound of— If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tell us what you learned in the comments below. Part 2 is coming soon, and trust me, you are not ready.